Hello, my name is Andrew Abraham. I'm a political exile from Chicago, Illinois. Right now, I'm in Kansas City. My question for the hosts are, what are your thoughts about secession? Should the red states secede from the Union?
Okay.
Ben, I'm going to let you take that one.
So, the problem is that there is a giant federal government with 2 million people working for it, including a massive army with nuclear weapons. And so, on a practical level, one of the reasons I moved to a red state was to personally secede from California, right? Was to move to a place where I was going to be surrounded by people who shared my values and who wanted to educate their kids the same way I wanted to educate my kids. And this is why I'm a big believer in federalism. I do think that the notion that this is going to go quite as smoothly as everybody seems to think it's going to go, that the federal government just says, okay, well, half the country can take off, that there's not a great history of that. What I think instead is that what's going to happen is a fight to destroy the scope of the federal government.
Yes.
Because either we are going to share country or we're not. And this really will be the question. The question is not going to be, is there a civil war in our future if the government continues to grow this way? Because if the government continues to grow this way, secession will happen. I mean, that just is the reality. If the government continues to grow to the point where it controls all aspects of life, down to whether you can own a gun, how you can educate your kids, when the states provide no barrier to how you choose to live your life, people will resist that. That's just the reality of how human beings live. The only way to combat that is going to be to tremendously limit and I think in large ways destroy the scope and ability of the federal government to control our lives and to relegate a lot of that power back to the states. And so one of the most encouraging things that I'm seeing is actually something that the left is very upset about, which is this big sort that's happening, right? Companies like ours moving from California to Tennessee. Now, us personally moving out of, I was born in LA, I grew up in LA, and now we live in Florida. And the company obviously is in this state. And, I think that as that happens more and more, it's going to become clear that if the federal government is not to be used as a tool by the red states against the blue or the blue against the red, it's going to have to be whittled down to size. And that means really not whittling. That really means taking a chainsaw and mowing it all the way down to size. If that doesn't happen, then I don't think it's a question of whether there is a secession. I think it's a question of just when that happens.
I think that, I agree that the federal government, the power of the federal government needs to be abridged significantly. The problem is that that requires the people in charge of the federal government to do that, and they're not ever going to agree to do it. We know even Republicans talk about shrinking the size of government. They never actually do it. I think the other problem is that even if we could achieve that, we still have this philosophical, this deeper problem, which is that we as Americans live already not in two different countries, but we live in two different universes, where there's this vast chasm between us that just cannot be bridged anymore. Where you've got, when I look at people on the other side of this ideological divide, what do we agree on? What basic value do we both hold? And that is nothing at all. We can't even agree that only women can have babies. We can't even agree on something as basic as that. So I just think that we already agree. We already live in this divided country.
Well,
with divisions that I think are deeper than what existed in the Civil War.
I don't know that our divisions are deeper than the belief that certain people are property and certain people are not. Right? I think that
there's the abortion issue. Yeah, that's one of them.
Believe me,
we have that. Plus, we have.
I don't think it's necessary to compare where we are in the country right now to a situation in which literally millions of people were being held as property and then 600,000 Americans died fighting one another. I don't think that's going to break out any moment. That doesn't mean I'm sanguine about where we are. What it does mean is that there are basically three paths for the country. One is complete federal tyranny, in which we just joust for who controls the government gun. And sometimes we win and sometimes we lose, and then eventually people get tired of being on the losing end of that bargain. You do end up with an actual violent secession movement. The second possibility is that states begin to actively resist the mandates of the federal government, which we're starting to see right now, and I'm very optimistic about. And the federal government realizes that as large as it is and as powerful as it is not willing to undergo the vicissitudes of unleashing federal law enforcement into the states in order to enforce, and you have basically a soft form of secession that isn't actually secession, where the states just continue
balkanization.
A certain balkanization. And then the third possibility is that you have sort of the European Economic Commission version of the United States, the Articles of Confederation version of the United States, right, which is the one thing that we can maybe agree on if we don't want to vie over the government gun. The one thing maybe we'll be able to agree on, this is what I'm hopeful about, maybe, is that maybe the people in California are so scared of the people in Texas, they say, we certainly don't want those people running our lives. And the people in Texas are so scared of the people in California, we say, we don't want those people running our lives.
It's funny. I actually don't think that the red states are the most likely to secede. I think if a secession were to happen today, it would be California, and it would take with it Washington and
they're trying to. They're actively trying to secede.
I also, Ben, I agree with your reticence here. I think conservatives are a little too loose with the calls for secession, because secessions do not happen peacefully. They just never do. It doesn't happen in India and Pakistan. It doesn't happen.
There's no Brexit process in the United States. That's
right.
Not how this works.
And so, unless you're really willing to go out and kill your cousins, which I'm not, I don't think that we ought to secede. But I do think also, look, I'd love to shrink the federal government and stop having them run our lives. But to Matt's point, we've been talking about that for 70 years, and we never do it, even when we win elections, because Republicans are cowardly. And there's maybe not even a way to do it. So I do think, it seems to me the call for secession is, ironically, sort of a lib answer. It's kind of this idea like, you do you. To getting to your point, Matt and Ben, about slavery and the comparison, we kill upwards of 1 million babies a year in this country. So I think the moral issues are pretty serious, and I don't want to just let half the country continue to do that. And I don't want to let them do them and destroy the distinction between male and female and do all sorts of horrible things and destroy my country. I want to take the power back. I want to exercise power in a
Let me just say one thing. Hold on, Matt. Let me just say one thing. Yes, secessions don't happen peacefully, but neither do unifications. That's the part that you're missing too, right? Like when countries come together, it's not peaceably either, right? What we're seeing right now in this country, I actually very much agree with Matt. There is not a single particle that we agree on, left and right. There's nothing. I mean, if you actually think that children should be taught pornography in school, tell me what the middle ground is there. Tell me where we're going to go, okay, you know what, let's unify here, like we're in couples counseling here, right?
No,
I think my child should be able to twerk and pick their gender and be sexualized in kindergarten. You say, no, I think that maybe the child should grow up. Tell me what the middle ground is.
No, there's no middle ground. You have to beat them and take away their power.
I think that that's actually a very sensible discussion to have. Yes, I understand it's not going to be easy, but clearly trying to unify the country is not very easy either, and it's equally as violent. How many people are dying in Black Lives Matter protests, Antifa protests? We're acting like the violence is not happening right now, today, in this country.
This is not just a discussion.
But why give them New York? Why don't we just keep it? Why don't we just my point on this, because I agree with everything you're saying, Candace. Absolutely, we should not let the teachers do this, or the woke generals, or anyone else do this. But why should we let them have their own part of the United States to do these evil, awful things?
Can I explain why?
Why don't we just take it back?
Can I explain why? Really, I want to bring it back to the shopping carts for a minute. I'm kidding. I'm joking. This is not just a discussion about what should happen. It's a discussion of what must happen. And so here's a must. A country must have some sort of uniting factor in order to remain a country, in order for a people to be a people. Totally and we know that other countries across the world, they're united by heritage, they're united by ancestry, they're united by
at least the flag.
Yeah, they're united sometimes by religion, by race. I mean, that's other countries in the world. That's never really been the case for our country, and that's fine. But we did have, as the United States of America, what united us were some basic shared values. And my point is that if we do not have that anymore, which we don't, and I don't see any scenario where magically we acquire those shared values, then the country doesn't exist anymore anyway. And so
we don't even agree on a national language anymore.
We have to deal with that reality.
I don't think anybody on the stage disagrees about the diagnosis. I think we disagree about both the prognosis and the cure. Meaning that I just don't know how you get from there to here.
But the diagnosis is we're not a country.
Hold on. I have to return here to the idea that some of this is theater, and it's purposeful theater, and it's theater that has been manufactured by the internet, which is a force we don't fully understand yet. And so I think it's true there is a group of people in this country who do not agree with the wisdom of the ages, the wisdom of the country, the founding of the country. I don't think it's that big a group. I don't think that the people who actually believe that men can become women, there's that many people. And so the question is, going back to what somebody said before about speaking out and not being afraid, is a question of calling them out, calling the people who fire John Gruden out and saying, no, you're the bad guys, and there's not that many of you. I really do believe on both the left and the right, because I don't believe this is a left-right question anymore. I believe this is a question of power, global conglomerating power, and this individuals, small,
I don't think that's
families.
But
of people.
they're not
think
phantom people either. Like, so it's like, yes, I agree with you. I believe that the majority of the nation does not want to see children sexualized. I can agree with that, right? But then I also have to be aware of the fact that, yes, the defund the police movement was real. Those were real people. There are real people all across the country that don't agree that we need to have local police. Like, they actually think it just all needs to be abolished, right? The idea of criminals running the street makes them feel happier than the idea that a criminal will be locked up rightfully and put into prison.
How many people do you think there are? And by the way, Candace, the question is not how many people there are in the moment, in a moment of panic, in a moment of hysteria, but how many people there are long term.
You know,
Well,
it's
can I
too many. Too many?
You say that you don't think that very many people actually believe that men can be women and so on. I wish that was the case. I hope that it is true. First of all, even if that is the case, then we talk about the silent majority. Well, shame on us as the majority if most of us don't believe this and we've allowed our culture. But I don't. But the reality is, you look at any of the survey, any of the polling. You find in the youngest generations, for example, gender nonconforming and trans identification among kids has risen tenfold over the previous generations. What that tells us is that this is a very real movement and phenomenon in our culture, and it's a very real divide that I think is basically unbridgeable.
I don't think that's what it tells us. I think what it tells us is people will believe anything. And I think that the problem that we're dealing with, we like to blame the left for everything that goes wrong in our country. Oh, the left, they believe in abortion. Oh, the left, they like to cancel people. Oh, the left, they say boys can be girls and girls can be boys. The right is the problem. We're cowards.
Totally agree with you there.
We ceded our country to them. They said, give me your country. And we said, oh, yeah, just don't say anything bad about me.
It's true. It's so true. You're right. You're spot on. I am not a coward. Like, I refuse to be a coward. I say everything, and I say some more things that I probably shouldn't say, just so they know that I have a right to say it, right? Yeah. But you are correct. You are correct. Republicans, especially white male conservatives, which I get it, you guys are under attack, but I mean, you will say something that is true, and then allow somebody to pigeonhole you and say that you saying that true thing makes you racist, and then you guys shut up. It's incredible. I've never seen anything like it. It's incredible. It's like magic,
true.
right?
Absolutely true.
Like only women can give birth. Shut up, you white racist. And suddenly, like, oh, I'm.
And I would happily be a coward if they'd let me.
I'll disagree in one sense that it's the right. Because the truth is that the right does not hold institutional power in this country, and has not held institutional power in this country for probably 2 generations. Okay, the truth is that the real problem in the country, in the end, and this is going to be the fate of the country, is and always will be the people in the middle. Right? Because there are a bunch of people in the middle. People who may agree with some of the left on policy, but disagree, I think on a fundamental level, with some of the crazy of the left, right? Disagree with defund the police, but still vote Democrat. Disagree with the abortion past the point of birth, but still vote Democrat. Disagree with the cancellation of everybody who has a bad old email, but is too afraid to say anything. And the question is, can those people be motivated to stand up? And if the answer is no, the country is going to fall apart naturally. It's not going to be a question of do we choose for the country to fall apart or not. It just will. Yeah. So if those people stand up, and if we can give them a backbone, that's really our job, right? Where we failed on the right is to give those people a backbone and a place to go. Because, I mean, I'm proud of what we're doing here at Daily Wire as a company and with your support what we're doing. But it's not just that. When Drew says that people in New York have to stand up and they have to speak out, what they also have to realize that there are going to be people who back their play when push comes to shove. Yeah. And that's where the right really needs to be, right? Because the right, many of us will say what we think. But the question is, okay, your neighbor got fired. You going to hire your neighbor now that your neighbor got fired from that corporation? Right? The pilots at Southwest are standing up and saying, even if we're vaccinated, we don't want to stand up for this vax mandate. Are you going to stand with the pilots? Right? The question is, are we on the right going to provide the spinal stiffener that is necessary in order for the people in the middle to feel the level of comfort that they can actually go out and do these things? I mean, I think part of that, by the way, is actually saying to people, yes, there are jobs for you outside of places like New York. Okay, so you lose your job in New York. Guess what? There's a whole other country that's not New York and not LA.
Vote with your feet.
What was that?
Vote with your feet.
Right, vote with your feet. And by the way, that is what is happening. And this is where the economy is growing, right? There's a reason people are moving. And so my hope for the future of the country is that how people talk about how they think in polls and how they actually act are 2 very different things. Yeah. Polling data is not a good indicator of how people live their lives. How people live their lives is a good indicator of how people live their lives, which is why you're losing congressional seats in California and New York and picking them up in Tennessee, Texas, and Florida.
Right.
I really agree with what you said, Ben. I actually want to close on this idea because part of the purpose of tonight was so that we could give you guys an update on what's been going on over at the Daily Wire since we loaded up the truck and moved to Tennessee. This is basically the philosophy from which the Daily Wire operates. It's that is there a way to save the country? I don't know, I'm not God. Is there a way for freedom or are we going into a new dark ages? I don't know, I'm not God. You know, it's not my job to save the world. I don't have the power to save the world. I don't know the future. All I can do is my part. Right? I can get up, take my steps, do my thing, and trust God with what the outcome is.
In your defense, Jeremy, you are a God king.
Yes.
You are not God, but you...
Lowercase g.
Lowercase g, yeah.
Can't emphasize enough. But what I do think is that if there is a chance for the country, it's actually through strength in division, not strength in unity. I think that there is a way for the country to come back together. It's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be fast. It's not going to happen if Donald Trump says he's running for re-election. It's not like 2024, the country's going to be back. It's not going to work that way. It's a huge mistake that conservatives make.
We always think we're one election away from the
next election.
Yeah.
No, this is a 40 or 50-year project
Yes.
to bring the country back together. And before we start moving back toward each other, what we actually have to do is consolidate power on the right. They've bifurcated the culture, right? We used to have one culture. We all listen to the same music, and we all watch the same movies, and we all watch the same sports, and we all watch the same TV shows. And then the left said, except all of you. You can give us your money if you want to, but you're not allowed to enjoy the stuff that we make. We're going to lecture you. We're going to talk down to you. We're not going to give you what you want. Great. Let's make our own culture. Now they're bifurcating the economy. They're saying, no, Parler, you can't even use our servers. You can't engage in basic commerce with Amazon, the largest commerce institution in the history of the world. No, if you don't agree with the left, you're not even allowed to shop, basically. If you don't agree with the left, you're not allowed to talk. If you don't agree with it... So what do we have to do? We have to build our own economy. We have to accept the premise that bifurcation is upon us, and we have to start succeeding over here. If they say to half of the country, you can't, that half of the country needs to say, screw you, we will. The irony is that when the right builds its own culture, when the right builds its own commerce, when the right builds its own institutions, when we stop just saying that we're religious and start actually practicing our religions, when the right becomes healthy and strong again, you will eventually reach a place where the only way for continued growth, right, when all the left watches Hollywood movies and all of the right watches Daily Wire movies, the only way for us to get new market share will be to come back together. But we're not going to come back together out of weakness. We're going to come back together out of strength. When we're as strong as we can be and as big as we can be, then the left is going to go, well, crap, I guess we shouldn't have done that thing that we did. And we're going to get to negotiate the terms of coming back together. It isn't, again, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be cheap. It's not going to be fast. We're going to take losses. Things are going to get worse before they get better. We're going to be dispirited. We're going to be demoralized. We're going to have to get back up, dust ourselves off, keep fighting. And if we do, I think over the course of, listen, the left won a generational battle. What we're waking up to now is the fact that we lost a generational battle. You don't turn that tide without us engaging in a generational battle. The beauty is we are now the counterculture. Look how great counterculture can be. Let's get out there and kick their ass.